Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. In a few minutes, the province will give an update on that closure of Highway 4 near Port Alberni. We'll bring that to you live with the Transportation Minister. Now, there has been talk in the past about a second paved route in that area, and some are revisiting that idea. So we're asking you this half hour, what are the gaps in our province's transportation network? Does your community need additional routes? Think of Highway 4 now, the Coquihalla Highway during the 2021 floods. How can our transportation network be improved? After 12:30, just in time for lunch, we chat about perfect picnic bits and bites. What's your favorite picnic spread? I'm Michelle Eliot. This is BC Today. Residents of Port Alberni, Ucluelet, and Tofino still can't use Highway 4 as a wildfire grows above that road. We are expecting an update on this in a few moments, and we will bring that to you live. In Tofino, the closure is the latest challenge for tourism operators and those trying to get home. Brad Parcell is Executive Director of Tourism Tofino, and he spoke to Stephen Quinn this morning on the Early Edition.
We certainly had a lot of people in destination when this happened, and so many of them were forced into a really difficult situation about whether to get home or to try and stick it out. As I understand that many of them have made their way home at this point, either through a lot of our regional air services that have been doing an outstanding job putting on extra flights to get people out of here, whether that's float plane or through Tofino Long Beach Airport. And then others have deemed that their travel is essential, had to get home for various reasons, and have tried to navigate the detour that's in effect.
So are some folks leaving their cars behind, then they're flying back and leaving their cars and to come back and pick them up later?
I have heard a couple of instances of that anecdotally, yeah.
That's Brad Parcell, the Executive Director of Tourism Tofino. He was speaking with Stephen Quinn this morning on the Early Edition. A reminder that we are standing by for an update from the province to get the latest details on the closure of Highway 4, and residents of western communities like Port Alberni, Ucluelet, and Tofino still cannot use that route as that wildfire grows ahead. Transportation Minister Rob Fleming will hold a news conference expected to begin at 12:15, so just about a few moments from now. We'll take you there live. Now, the increased timeline of the closure has some residents talking about the need for a second permanent route into the area. And a route called the Horn Lake Connector has been studied over the past decade. It was concluded to be too costly. And now this is not the first time a major route has been closed because of the impacts of extreme weather. We need just to look back to the flooding and mudslides of November 2021, for example. And we're also taking your calls on this topic for today. We're asking you, what happens when a community loses road access? What are the gaps in our province's transportation network? Do you think your community would benefit from additional transportation routes? Love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. On your cell phone, star or pound 690. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. My guest is Carrie Ann Lau, a senior geoscientist from BGC Engineering, and with an expertise in debris flow and geohazards. She's studied the impacts of destructive weather events, including the flooding and atmospheric river in November 2021. Carrie Ann, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
What do you make of the disruption we're seeing along Highway 4 right now?
It's really tragic for many communities to see these closures, but it's not uncommon for us to get them across the province. Every single year, we usually have a few highway closures that are shut down for a few days or perhaps a few weeks due to a significant wildfire along a stretch of a corridor.
And tell me specifically what's going on Highway 4. I know there are concerns about the danger of falling trees and debris from the wildfire above it, the slope conditions as well. What exactly has been the impact of this nearby wildfire?
We've seen this on a number of fires, and usually the closures, as you've highlighted, are because of the danger of falling trees. Particularly if it's a severe wildfire, it can undermine the strength of a tree, and then that can fall onto the road, often at times where we don't have a lot of warning. And so that's the major concern, but there also can be concerns during a wildfire from increased rockfall occurring. As the rocks heat up from that wildfire, they expand, and then as soon as they cool down afterwards, they sometimes roll down the hill quite rapidly and can either impact wildfire operations or in the cases of cars traveling through and other vehicles.
And so right now, I believe yesterday they were talking about assessment work being done. What exactly is the province working on at the moment then?
On this particular fire, I'm not sure, but with most wildfires, there'll be an assessment of either danger trees. So BC Wildfire going in and assessing whether or not any trees need to be cut down, perhaps to assure that there is any trees that might fall onto the road, they might take those out, or look to see if there's any other kinds of hazards, such as down power lines that might be burnt. So looking at, are there any safety risks either to the wildfire crews controlling the fire, or again, from the vehicle travelers afterwards.
Okay. Let's take some calls now. My guest joining me right now, Carrie Ann Lau, senior geoscientist from BGC Engineering with an expertise in debris flow and geohazards. And we're asking you, what happens when a community loses road access? And what are the gaps in our transportation network in BC? Do you think your community needs alternate routes? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, on your cell phone, star or pound 690. And we actually have a caller from Port Alberni right now, of course, one of the communities that's being affected. Roman, hello. Good to hear from you. Thanks for joining us. Tell me about what are things like for you right now?
On the ground, in the moment, it is frustrating. There is some really good happening here to try and bring levity to it. You know, some people are trying to make the best of it, you know, offering up help, offering up the and offering a number of different ways and means to bring goodness into the chaos. But the fact remains, this is something that is quite preventable. Of course, it's going to have a price tag, but there are two facets that I can name right off the bat that would definitely qualify this for immediate reinvestigation for infrastructure upgrades of some. For years, we've had a multi-use highway that's a singular highway all the way from, as we said, Highway 4 into Port Alberni and then beyond out to Tofino, Euclid, and the newly outlying communities. However, those are also pristine and prized tourism destinations, and they also have a number of resources being extracted, fisheries and otherwise. So we have commercial traffic, tourism traffic, local traffic, and supply trucks all using the same pipeline.
Right.
And when you look at it commonsensically, any infrastructure that's being overwhelmed is either upgraded or replaced. You think of water and fluid dynamics. If there is a bottleneck, they're going to fix the bottleneck. And right now, this is a tremendous bottleneck. And the most point I want to put into this, emergency situations are not just forest fires. We also live in a place where a lot of the communities are directly in inundation zones for major events like tsunamis. Again, it's going to play a critical role to have multi-path exit routes so that people don't get clogged up and get stuck waiting installed, parking on the highway when we're trying to escape an oncoming tsunami.
Yeah, sure.
You know, again, we really need to look at this from all aspects of access and exiting, being able to do it in a good, meaningful fashion and not be stuck in this chaos as we've seen play out in front of us right now.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points there, Roman, including, what's being prioritized right now. Of course, some would have advantages, right, when it comes to being able to transport themselves. And so what do you know about this alternate route that has been considered in the past? There was a feasibility study into it. It was the Horn Lake route.
Well, I think at the end of the day, cost really was the limiting factor, but you also have to give, I think, a weighted to that now. What is the cost of not doing anything weighed against this? It's fine to say that it's going to have a hard time being explained in the budget, but how do you compare it to what you can see now are real direct threats to not only individuals but to entire communities if this is not looked at immediately? There are a couple places I've seen, not just in Port Alberni and beyond, but there was one that was being looked at between Tofino out onto the Island Highway North. There was one from Ahousaht right across the bay there in White Pine that is possibly a good route. But again, are we going to look at this from the matter of cost savings? Are we going to look at it diligently for cost savings versus safety of life?
And Roman, earlier you talked about finding levity and goodness amid the chaos. Can you tell me a little bit about that, the chaos and the goodness?
Well, there are some people that are doing their darndest. I've seen multiple requests to say, where are the firefighters? Their base of operations. I want to bring them baked goods. I want to bring them cases of water. They want to say thanks directly to the guys, the ladies, the people that are at the front lines. And there are those who are offering their services to the ones who are kind of unsure of the route being marked. So they say, you know what, get a hold of me. I can either bring you or I can guide you. So there's a lot of people work hard. And I've seen, even today, I'm trying to arrange to be a part of it, the Nuu Nations out on the West Coast here working together to bring food staple items to the members who live in the various cities, including Port Alberni, just to kind of take a little bit of pressure off and give a little bit of help and support, maybe give a sense of a firmer ground to stand on.
Roman, it's really, really good to hear from you, and sit tight and we'll find out what's coming for Highway 4, okay?
Thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Roman. That's Roman joining us from Port Alberni, one of the West Coast communities, of course, that's been cut off from the main paved route, Highway 4. That's been shut down now for almost a week in light of the Cameron Bluffs wildfire. We're going to get an update from the Transportation Minister in a few moments. It is scheduled to begin any moment now, and we'll find out what the plans are for when that highway might be reopened. It is 17 minutes past the hour now here on BC Today. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you are on CBC Radio 1. We are live streaming, of course, on CBC Vancouver's YouTube page, as well as cbc.ca/BC and on the CBC Gem app. So good to have you with us. Our next caller now is joining us from Lytton, and Tricia is on the line. Hi there.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you very much for calling. And thanks for calling from Lytton. You certainly know about emergencies.
Yeah. The thing is, with emergency egress routes, I think what's being forgotten, I'm very glad in a weird way that this is being brought to the forefront with Tofino and Ucluelet and Port Alberni. But there are a lot of tiny little communities that only have one way in and one way out. And when wildfire or floods happen, these people are potentially trapped. And there is a concern for loss of life. Botany Valley, where I live, actually is one of the 2021 wildfire. The emergency evacuation route out of here is not maintained. It is a Forest Service road, and it's barely passable, and it's not marked. And people got lost up in the mountains there. Some of them with children trying to get out. I think what happens with the government, my understanding is that when an emergency happens, if there's an alert, then they look at the roads and see about getting people out. But often we don't have time for an alert. It's a full-on evacuation. And my concern is if we don't take a more proactive approach and spend money, even if it's maintaining these roads to the bare minimum standard, we're going to have a loss of life, and it's going to be tragic. And I think we need to be far more proactive in terms of emergency egress routes than we are being now.
Wow. Are any potential routes or alternate routes that come to mind for you, Tricia?
Well, for example, again, we'll talk about Botany Valley, which is close to where I live. There is a way out, but you can make it with a 4x4 now, but it's not marked. You need to know the route. Like I said, people got lost in 21. Yeah. I know of areas on the west side here where when they had the 22 wildfire, the fire was heading north, which was the only emergency egress route available at that time, because the route to the south, again, not maintained, but with the 21 atmospheric river, it was out of commission, and the ferry was out of service. We look at places like Wallachine or Barnes Lake Road, where there's only one way in, one way out, unless we do something to kind of bring a forestry road up to a minimum standard.
Maintenance of those roads too. Tricia,
exactly.
It's so
it's
good
scary.
to hear from you. Yeah, it's very, very good to hear from you. Thanks very much for sharing your experience from Lytton.
Welcome. Thank you.
Let's go back to our guest, Carrie Ann Lau. Yes, as you mentioned earlier, we see some of these closures every year, right? For a day or two. She's talking about roads where communities that only have one road in and out. What did you make of what she said there? At Roman as well, the need to build up this infrastructure, especially in case of emergencies.
Yeah, and I've actually driven some of the roads that Trisha was talking about there on the west side of the Fraser River and looking at some of the damages that happened on these secondary evacuation routes. Often they're forestry roads that may not be to the same standard, either from sight lines or from maintaining water access or water routes through them. And a lot of those interior networks were damaged during the 2021 flood. And even as of a few months ago, there still is no access on those secondary evacuation routes. So when we talk about resiliency, we're looking at this from multiple perspectives. Is the community able to get in and out of those places? Do they have a secondary evacuation route? And if they don't, are they able to shelter safely in place? Wildfires are a bit tricky, but in the context of the atmospheric river, does a community have enough supplies? We often talk about 72 hours, being able for a community to sort of look internally and see if they have the resources there, either food, water, power, gasoline, and having those on hand if they know that they're going to be in a case where they might not be able to egress quickly. And that's a little bit different. Each member of the community has a different ability to be able to evacuate. In the case there with the Botany Valley, that's a 4x4 road. And I know personally, if I lived there, I wouldn't have a 4x4 vehicle. And so you have to consider all of this when you're looking at the community's resiliency and being able to look at different types of disasters. In the context of the 2021 atmospheric river, that was significant damage to all of our infrastructure network in multiple different locations. And different communities had different levels and abilities to be able to respond to that event.
Let's take some more calls now. Carrie Ann Lau is with me, senior geoscientist from BGC Engineering. And we're asking you, in light of the closure of Highway 4 near Port Alberni, because, of course, it's closed due to that nearby wildfire, the Cameron Bluffs wildfire, we're going to get an update from the province any moment now. We're standing by to see when that begins. But we're asking you what's needed to improve BC's transportation network and what happens when a community is cut off from road access. Our numbers, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. On your cell phone, star or pound 690. Dorothy is up next now and joining us as well from Port Alberni. Dorothy, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Good.
I'm going to keep this brief. My name is Dorothy Brooks. I have lived in Port Alberni since 1958, and we have been through quite a few emergencies. So about the late 80s, Alberni Economic Transportation Committee was formed. And I believe my husband was chairman of it, and somebody else very involved was the Chamber of Commerce. The fellow there at that time was Mike Carter. It was called the New Road Link, and we had rallies that started in Port Alberni, and they would either go down through the Courtenay-Cumberland route, which came out in the area around Comox Lake, or they would go through Lake Cowichan. And there'd be a rally at each end, and then at other times we had a couple more rallies that started in those places and would have something down on the waterfront in Port Alberni.
Yeah.
The road to Courtenay-Cumberland is certainly a favorable road. There are no great hills. I believe Mosaic probably is the company now, and maybe it's not as easy to get along with as the old days of McMillan, Blodell, and some of those. There would be a gate at our end. There would be a gate possibly near the reservoir where Comox gets its water. However, in an emergency, those gates would be opened, signs would be put up, and we could go through there.
Okay. And so, Dorothy, I'm just going to ask you, and you're saying this is now just, it's been poor planning then when it comes to infrastructure.
Well, I think so. I think that, I don't know for sure, but my understanding is that Mosaic has made it impassable, that not even the forestry looks after it. Nobody looks after it.
Okay. Dorothy.
And I think that's wrong. We need that second way out of here, whether we go north or we go south.
Dorothy, thank you very much. Very good to hear from you in Port Alberni. And Transport Minister Rob Fleming is speaking right now. Let's go live.
Right now, our geotechnical engineers are on site looking at that challenging slope above the road. It's very As we've said from the outset, even when the fire is out, it will take some additional time to implement measures that will allow people to travel safely. While crews are acting with urgency, we will have to take whatever time is needed. Barriers that may be required to keep people safe when the road is reopened. Once the highway opens, it will not be fully open right away. We are expecting single lane alternating traffic for some period of time in and around the Cameron Bluffs site. Ministry staff will be providing more details shortly in terms of the work ahead and what that looks like, what this phased reopening will look like as well. And as we have for the past week, we'll continue to provide updates through travel advisories and on our Drive BC website. I want to acknowledge the uncertainty that this closure has caused, and I want to extend a deep thanks to the people in island communities who are affected by this closure, for their patience, for their understanding, and for the spirit and example of helping one another during difficult times. I also want to thank the mayors, councillors, regional district directors, and their staff, as well as First Nations governments for the tremendous help and support that they have provided. Local governments and the regional districts and First Nations governments have been in constant communication with their citizens to ensure that people are both safe and well informed, and they have also supported my ministry staff as we established the detour from Port Alberni through to Lake Cowichan. That detour, though far from ideal, has kept food, fuel, and other supplies on the move to the people that need them. Thank you also to the forestry companies, Mosaic, Sewalkin, Western Forest Products, for stepping up to help us open that essential detour route. The route includes their privately owned forest roads, and we appreciate very much the company's support for our communities during this very challenging situation. We also appreciate the support and the role that the BC trucking industry has provided to keep commercial vehicles rolling with those vital supplies. They've helped to make sure that there is food on grocery stores and that there is fuel available for citizens who can no longer use Highway 4 for the time being. On the weekend, we began 4 daily scheduled piloted convoys for commercial vehicles carrying essential goods and services.
That's Transport Minister Rob Fleming speaking from Chilliwack right now to the plans for reopening Highway 4 on Vancouver Island, still closed. The new timeline, looking at next weekend, they'll look at a single lane reopening. And on July 7th, they will monitor slope behavior for at least 2 weeks. And they're looking at mid-July, tentatively, for a full reopening. You heard the Transport Minister there talking about convoys bringing in goods. He also acknowledged the uncertainty among people living in those island communities and that are affected. So again, Transport Minister Rob Fleming speaking from Chilliwack, saying next weekend is when Highway 4 is expected to reopen with a single lane. They'll continue to monitor slope behavior for at least 2 weeks, looking at mid-July for a tentative full reopening. Let's wrap up now with our guest, Carrie Ann Lau, who's a geoscientist and a senior geoscientist with BGC Engineering. What do you make of the plan there from the province?
That sounds like a very normal response for the province in terms of looking at public safety, in terms of road reopening and timelines, and really importantly, getting a look at the slope and how it might behave over a period of time. And what we know from the increasing wildfires that we've seen across the province and in other areas of North America is that these slopes can sometimes respond with geohazards for many months to many years following a significant wildfire. And so looking at that from a geotechnical perspective, from a geohazard perspective, and then making recommendations for public safety measures as a result of that.
It's very good to have you with us this afternoon. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you as well.
That's Carrie-Anne Lau, a senior geoscientist from BGC Engineering. And a couple of emails here. Lisa in Roberts Creek writes, our community on the Sunshine Coast has only one road connecting all the communities. Highway 101 from Langdale to Earls Cove is our only main connector and has been completely shut down from car accidents on more than a few occasions. That means ambulances cannot reach the hospital and other scary situations. We need a second road. Thank you very much for that email. bctoday@cbc.ca is where you can reach us. And it is now 12:31, 1:31 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today here on CBC, on radio and live streaming as well. Coming up in our next half hour, we're going to take your calls on picnics. With the warm weather, you may be heading out, spreading out all the treats. Let us know what makes for a perfect picnic for you. That's coming up after the CBC News Update. And here's Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The provincial government is clearing the site of a controversial homeless camp in Abbotsford. The camp at Lonzo Road and Sumas Way was the site of hundreds of police calls over the last few years. Now the province says residents there will be transitioned to safe indoor spaces. 2 apartment buildings in Esquimalt have been evacuated after a collapse at a nearby excavation site. Crews were called to an area near the entrance to the naval base after a shoring wall and part of the road collapsed. Fire officials say no one was hurt and engineers are now assessing the site. And the BC Wildfire Service says the number of active fires has fallen below 80 in the province for the first time in at least a week. But a weather system sweeping across much of the province has the potential to cause more trouble. The front is bringing heavy rain to some areas, but it also carries the risk of lightning and gusty winds. And now taking a look at the forecast, severe thunderstorm watches and warnings are in place for much of the southern interior. A wind warning is in effect for West Vancouver Island. On the north coast, windy this afternoon with some sunshine and a high of 15. Highs to 15 with showers and a risk of thunderstorms in the Peace and central interior. Highs reaching 28 with thunderstorms in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, a high of 26 with a chance of showers and thunderstorms. And a chance of showers in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. A bit of sunshine in Greater Victoria with highs around 19 degrees. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Michelle with BC Today.
So maybe not perfect picnic weather right now.
It is not perfect. It's a little cloudy out there right now.
Little gray out there. So
we had a good run though, Michelle.
We sure did. So we're going to
Yes.
hear about that, what people did and what they brought with them to the park.
Nice.
Nibbled on. Thank you so
Great.
much.
You bet.
Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks so much for joining us. Yes, one of the pleasures of warmer weather when we have it is eating outdoors. And picnic season is upon us. Whether you bring everything but the table to your outings or lean more on the minimal side, we want to hear about your picnic experiences, your advice, and your favorite recipes. What is your favorite picnic spread? And do you want to try going from prepackaged snacks to something that you actually make at home? What about the experience? What makes for a perfect, fun picnic? Maybe you struggle with keeping sand out of your pasta salad. Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. On your cell phone, star or pound 690. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now is Anna Wallner, who's co-owner and president of Savory Chef. She's here with me in studio. Hello.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you with us. I see you've got there your goblets, some plates. Is that a little picnic blanket you've got there? Or?
Just serviettes. I think
serviettes.
cloth
Okay.
serviettes are always a better idea
Very
than paper.
nice. They look quite rustic. It gives me that rustic vibe.
Exactly, and they won't blow away.
No, that's right. They're heavy enough, and you've got a little, it's sort of a platter there, a wooden platter.
Yeah, like a charcuterie board, I
Nice.
think is a great thing to have in your repertoire if you're doing picnic thing, and melamine plates that won't break.
They will not break.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you've got the stuff there. Set the scene for us. What makes for a perfect picnic?
Well, I just think food tastes better outside. People like to sit on the patio when they go out for dinner.
Right.
And I just think there's something about the whole idea of eating outside that just celebrates summer and is really a great way to celebrate being together.
Yeah, and so what are the things? You've got the plates and the glasses there, but what about food? What are the things that we should be thinking about?
Well, I always like to think, and I'm a very enthusiastic picnicker.
Okay,
but
okay.
I always like to think either food that you can eat with your hands or one utensil. So a fork or a
Right.
spoon, but not a knife and fork. So a little bit simpler that way. You don't want to be struggling with a knife and fork if you've got your plate on your lap.
Yes, that's why little pasta salads are always nice. Right?
Yeah, like grain salads are great, and foods that are best served at warm temperature. You don't want to be dealing with trying to get food that's hot necessarily. And like grain salads, smoked fish is wonderful. Boards, we hear a lot about charcuterie boards, and I think foods that are good for grazing. So you can pick at things, and it really sort of elongates the experience.
Perfect to nibble on. Okay, I have to admit, when I've gone on picnics, my go-to is going to a restaurant or packing up takeout and the fries and the burgers and things like that. So is that cheating?
No, of course not. I think it can be as simple and as minimalist as you like. It can be, burgers from your favorite restaurant. It can be a pizza, or you can really go to town and elevate the experience if you want to do the work, because it is a lot of work.
Okay, yes, it can be a lot of work. Tell me about your best picnic experience.
Oh, there are so many. At Savory Chef, we cater picnics that are like bridal showers, baby showers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Elopements, engagement experiences. And when I do them from home, it's a lot of prep in advance, and then packaging and getting it to the location, and then the setup and the teardown. But it's worth it.
It's almost
fun.
like camping. It's like setting up the tent.
Yes, that's right.
Anna Wollner is with me, co-owner and president of Savory Chef, and we're asking you about your favorite picnic spreads. What do you need to bring? Are you someone who goes and gets takeout, or do you make your own stuff, your own food? We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions too, you can give us a call. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 on your cell phone, star or pound 690. And let us know if you have a perfect picnic spot too. Do you have a favorite place to go? Love to hear from you. What makes it so special? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Okay, so what about drinks? What makes for a perfect picnic drink?
Well, a couple of things I love to do is pre-make a cocktail. And you can put it in one of those to-go wine bottles you can get from a dollar store. You can pre-make some sparkling water or flavored water with mint and lemon, and put that into a thermos and bring that with you. And of course, don't forget the wine bottle opener.
Yeah, that's right. You'll be stuck.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And of course, some municipalities are allowing
That's right.
alcohol at parks and beaches. So there you go. Keep that in mind. Box juices for me, just because I've gone with my kids. So it's been box juices for sure. And what about making a mess then? How do you avoid that?
Well, that has been an issue, as we know recently. And I just think, people need to remember that you want to be able to go back there the next time and have it be clean. So it takes an extra 10 minutes. Bring some garbage bags, bring some bags that you can fill up with disposable containers or leftovers, and just take it with you, and be a good picnicker. Don't leave it messy for others.
That's right. You don't want people taking photos of that and posting shaving
because
on
they
social
will.
media. Yes, they will.
I might actually.
Yes, exactly. Let's go to a call now. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. I think we've lost our call. My apologies. 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. Do you have a favorite spot? Are you willing to share your favorite spot?
Well, I have a few favorite spots, and people are very protective over their picnicking spots.
I was wondering if anyone would share it.
Yeah, okay. So there's a few good ones that I love around Vancouver. Lighthouse Park is wonderful. Obviously, amazing views, and it's really nice to sit on the rocks there. You don't get as much mess. I'm not as big on the sand locations, but if you do like sand, if you go to the very, very western end of Jericho, at the very, very end, before you go up the hill to the University of BC, there's a little hidden beach that just runs under the trees, and it's a beautiful spot to watch the sunset, and you're covered by some trees, and it's very secluded and romantic.
We have someone actually who's calling in about White Cliff Park. Zachary in Vancouver
you
is on
go.
the line. Hi there.
Hey, how are you guys today?
Oh, very well. And yes, White Cliff Park.
Yes, that's one of our favorite hangouts. We love going to White Cliff Park. It kind of feels like you're outside the city, and it's just beautiful, those views. And there's lots of private picnic benches. And like she was saying, there's nice trees to kind of get a little bit more shade, a little bit more hidden and romantic. We absolutely love it there.
Wonderful. My son was just there a couple of weekends ago, and they had a picnic too. So tell us about what you bring, Zachary.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like a little at-home chef. I love doing like planning little things, and one of my favorites is the night before I whip up like a little couscous salad with like a homemade pesto sauce with some Parmesan, celery, some snap peas, and as it sits in the fridge overnight and marinates before we take it out the next day, it's absolutely beautiful. It's cold, it's fresh, it's so nice.
Wow. Have you been already this summer, Zachary?
We have, but we haven't had a picnic there, so that's definitely on our list for summer to come, yeah.
Wonderful. Any tips for people?
I would say go during the week and more around the lunchtime because the parking is a little bit limited out there.
Right.
And yeah, just go during the week and yeah, you're good to go. It's pretty chill out there.
Zachary, thank you very much. I'm thinking of that couscous salad with snap peas. It just sounds yummy. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye. It's Zachary in Vancouver. That sounds lovely, that salad.
Well, I absolutely agree with him. Like I was saying before, grain salads and making it the night before so it has time to settle and then serving it cold is the way to go for picnics.
What about finger food? So what kinds of sandwiches and bites do you prefer?
So you can do a million things. You could do individual little tartlets, again, that are easy to eat with one hand. You could do tea sandwiches so you're not battling with a big messy thing. I think nothing that has really heavy sauces. We've all heard before you don't want mayonnaise in the sunshine, but it's just I think this setting is really conducive to lighter eating. So olive oil vinaigrettes and grilled meats that have been chilled and smoked fish is wonderful, and crudité. So cut up vegetables. You can make your own dips or you can buy a dip, and set it out on a grazing board and get a game going. Get a bocce game going, or frisbee, or bring a little speaker, and really extend your visit. I think that's the key.
I know the park that I like to go to. There's often a bocce game. The Confederation Park. There's often some people playing bocce there. It's so lovely to watch. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. What about if you do have kids? What are some good treats for kids?
So I think something to keep in mind with kids is, especially with kids, you can picnic anywhere. You can picnic in the backyard, especially if you've got really little ones. And if you're going out to a park or a beach, I think it's important to consider bringing games and activities for them to do. Yeah. Just so they're constantly engaged.
Someone is asking, yes, this is a really good question. What about critters? What about squirrels and geese? How do you deal? Yes, this is a really good question. How do you deal with that?
So you can really set up a perimeter around if you have enough space with extended blankets, pillows. You can bring the hanging mosquito repellent products, and I think the later you stay, probably the more the bugs may come out, and to a certain extent, you kind of have to accept that this is part of eating outside.
Yes, the wasps. I remember the wasps sitting at the park there, and got our beach chairs and just like swatting them away, running and keeping the food away. It's like I'm trying to eat, but keep trying to keep it away from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. And Anna, you've got these lovely things here, right? The goblets and the melamine plates and the charcuterie board and the lovely heavy napkins there. What do you carry in?
Well, a backpack for me.
Yeah.
We try to go on bike. So we try to keep it kind of tight. But if it's a bigger occasion, you may have to drive your car because you'll have so much stuff. But really, whatever the size, I think picnicking is a great time to elevate the experience. Bring the non-breakable outdoor melamine plates. Bring the plastic wine cups that you can use throughout the year, and the fabric napkins that won't blow away. I got these charcuterie boards at a farmer's market many years ago. I use them throughout the summer every year. And it really will make an occasion out of it and feel special.
Yeah, exactly. I feel fancy just sitting next to you with all these right here behind us. What about if you're on a budget?
Well, of course, you could just do one thing. If you're into picnicking, then it might be worth investing in. And of course, you can use this at home as well. You can use it in the backyard. But just doing a few small things will really help to elevate the experience. And preparing the food yourself at home is, of course, much more budget friendly than
That's true.
doing the takeout thing.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Now, we've kind of talked about savory things. What about sweets? What are your favorite desserts?
So savory is a great theme for a picnic. We do a lot of bridal showers that are just dessert oriented. So you could do mini cupcakes. You could do cakes on cake stands.
Right. Yes.
Like doing various heights, I think is really beautiful. And if you are bringing a whole cake, I would recommend cutting it in advance. That's sort of thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So that, again, you're not fumbling with extra utensils at the time.
That's right. What about one of my favorites is cake pops.
Cake pops is a great idea.
Yeah. And how would you transport them? I guess you can get a little tray, right, and bring
in
it
a
out.
tray or in a Tupperware box.
Yeah.
With a big lid.
Okay, I love cake pops. I think those
Who
are
doesn't
really
love
good.
a cake pop?
Yes, exactly. Getting me hungry here. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone, asking you about your favorite picnic spreads. What do you like to bring? What are the ingredients you like to work with? And tell us as well if you have a favorite dessert. And let us know where you like to go. We heard earlier from Zachary who likes to go to White Cliff Park. Our numbers, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. And you talked earlier, Anna, about mayonnaise. You kind of don't want it sitting out in the sun, turning yellow.
Yeah, I think nothing too mayonnaise-y, especially if it's a very hot day and if you're going to be sitting out all afternoon.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea of keeping the ingredients to the dishes prepared in advance but separate. So don't dress your salad in advance. Dress it on site. And keep things separate. You can even make sandwiches on site. You can if you bring the bits and pieces. But generally, I think the hotter weather is more conducive to lighter fare, lighter dishes.
Okay. And we're going to take some calls. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Someone is asking as well, what about alcohol-free picnic beverages? Do you have a favorite recipe?
Well, again, you could do flavored water, so just plain water or carbonated water with mint or sliced lemon or sliced lime. There are lots of non-alcoholic flavored drinks that you can bring as well. You can make your own at home. You could do fresh grapefruit juice with sparkling water and like maybe fresh. Cranberries or
that's nice.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, that would elevate things, I'm sure.
In a beautiful glass.
Exactly. A gorgeous, even though it's plastic, because it has it's a goblet, it makes you feel extra fancy. Let's take a call again, asking you about your favorite picnic spreads. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone. And we do have a call waiting on the line, just waiting for them to come on just now. Okay, and we've lost our connection with that call. And so how long is a perfect picnic? Like how long before the food goes bad?
It It really depends on the event. If it's an occasion, say you're doing a bridal shower or a girls' night out, you would expect it to go on maybe for several hours. But my husband and I actually like to do just golden hour picnics. So we'll go from sort of 5 to 6:30 or 7, and then we might go out for dinner, or we have just sort of a light snack and then go out for dinner, or just go watch the sunset, and that's it. And that's a lovely way to spend a couple of hours on a sunny afternoon in Vancouver.
Oh wow! What are you doing this weekend?
I don't know yet. Actually, I was thinking this morning I should plan a picnic.
I think that you should. Nico from Gabriola Island sent us a comment. If you're barbecuing on a beach, yes, please be mindful of the smoke. Some poorly made barbecues can really interfere with other park and beach users. That's a great point, Nico.
I think it is a really great point for barbecuing, as the caller says, but also if you have music playing, you need to be mindful of those around you. If you have dogs with you, you need to be mindful of others. And as we were saying earlier, leave no trace.
Yeah, keep that in mind. Nico, thank you very much. We did talk about barbecuing last week on the program as well, and that came to mind for me was etiquette when it comes to bringing your barbecue to the park. Lucky is writing from West Kelowna. On weekends during the summer, my wife and I love to picnic on our boat. We also go to the other side of the lake, lovely in West Kelowna, and find a beach that's unoccupied and relax there as well. We just bring finger foods because yes, it is so much easier. Imagine being on a boat in the Okanagan Lake. Marlene writes, your guest suggested it would be a good idea to take a speaker. Oh, this is your point earlier. Wouldn't that just annoy other people wanting a quiet time in nature? How can we do that and be respectful?
I think it totally depends, and she's right, and it totally depends on where you are. I think if you're at crowded Kits Beach, there's probably everyone else's music is playing anyway. So you need to sort of make a decision in the moment, depending on where you are, but always be respectful of others. I think many spots you can have low music playing, low volume music
and you're
playing.
Farther away from other folks. So there you go. You can be respectful while doing it as well. Or perhaps no music. Anna, thank you so much. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for being here, having me be here.
Anna Wallner is co-owner and president of Savory Chef. Right now it's 12:52, 1:52 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today here on CBC Radio 1, as well live streaming on CBC's Vancouver's YouTube page, as well as on CBC Gem and on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Well, members of the South Asian community handed out food and drinks to the downtown Eastside community over the weekend. The event is in its second year, and it was designed to honor the legacy of Punjabi language rapper Sidhu Moosewala. CBC's Yasmin Gandam joined them, and today she explains that it would have been his 29th birthday.
Dozens of pizza boxes and pop cans handed out to people living in the downtown east side. Sidhu Moosewala's music blaring through the streets as people who don't know the musician learn about his legacy.
They always ask, why are you guys doing this? So we try telling them who he was, about his talent, about the kind of person he was, and hopefully, if we do this in his memory, everyone will have a positive image of him.
The food drive organized by fans and personal friends of the singer who say this is exactly how he would have celebrated his birthday.
I feel like feeding the homeless and helping the people in need was the best way to remember him and keeping his legacy alive. So he would have loved doing stuff like this himself.
Sidhu Moosewala was shot dead in Punjab last May. He was born there but moved to Brampton, Ontario to find success as a rapper. He was known for his fusion music that combined hip-hop with Punjabi music and was praised for opening doors for other Punjabi artists to progress into the mainstream. The singer tackled several social issues facing the Punjabi community, including a song about the widespread farmers' protest in India of 2020. Event organizers say it's why they are choosing to give back to an underserved community.
This is what we're all about, our community. We love doing stuff like this, and even when we were setting up, everyone came up to us and they were like, oh, you guys are awesome for doing this. They knew what we were going to do the minute they saw us pull up, because I guess our community always does stuff like this here.
The lineup stretching around the block of people waiting to get a free meal. They say it's not just about the food, but the community.
The community is like family, right? So everybody helps each other out. We give what we can, right? Dad's here from Winnipeg, right? And I'm kind of living in a shelter right now. Don't have any real support for him. And this is how we feed ourselves. So.
People are reaching out, and that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know. It's a good feeling,
Community members behind this event say they hope it becomes an annual tradition to remember who they call a legend, Sidhu Moosevala, and hope his legacy never dies. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Thanks to Yasmin Gandam for that story. A couple minutes left in our program today, and earlier we told you about the province's plans for the closure and reopening of Highway 4. That is the main road connecting West Coast communities on Vancouver Island, of course, Port Alberni, Ucluelet, and Tofino. And Transport Minister Rob Fleming is still speaking to reporters right now. What he announced earlier today was that next weekend they plan to reopen just a single lane traffic, and on July 7th they would monitor slope behavior, minimum 2 weeks. And that's, of course, because there's concern about falling trees and debris from the Cameron Bluffs wildfire that's taking place just above the road. Mid-July, they would look at a tentative full reopening. And the minister also acknowledged the uncertainty among people in those island communities that are affected, and they continue to monitor safety. We were asking you about our province's transportation network as well. Where do you think alternate routes are needed? And what happens when a community is cut off from road access? A lot of emails came in. Diane writes, I find it interesting in this time of global warming, which is causing these catastrophes, that the only travel route alternatives are to build another road. How about rail? We need options other than cars on roads. Andrew in Port Coquitlam writes, I'm concerned about the lack of rail transportation in BC. Countries that have similar geography and population density, like Norway, have been investing in alternate transportation for decades, giving people a choice not to drive. With the current fire situation, the existing railway to Port Alberni could have been used as an alternative to Highway 4. Similarly, it is mind-boggling why passenger rail is not available between Vancouver, Whistler, and Prince George, despite the tracks being there. And Bonnie writes as well, I'm listening to your show this afternoon and I wanted to mention another road where there could be a problem is the road into Cultus Lake. It is a very popular spot being so close to the Lower Mainland, and if there was a fire, there is no way out. On a long weekend, it's impossible to get out without a disaster. And Don writes, the system on Vancouver Island needs another look, especially for areas from Nanaimo going to the West Coast. Having commercial freight transported through the rail system, let's take a look here. Through the rail system, especially for those on the West Coast and Ucluelet to Port Alberni and Ucluelet, would take a lot of stress off the current infrastructure. Thanks so much for all of your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca is where you can reach us. And that is it for our show today. Thanks so much to everyone who joined us on the program and called into discussion. I hope you have a nice picnic this weekend. You can always watch us again, CBC Gem and CBC Vancouver on YouTube. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thanks for watching and listening.